code envy. Boyd was telling me, well, there's only one E, so really it's cod envy. So really it's a place that you're really envious of this. That's where we're going. So codeenvy.io. Apparently it knows that I'm already logged in. Let's see if I log out. I want to do it from there. Log out. Here we go. So you'll click on the GitHub link, right? We all linked up CodeEnvy to our GitHub just to make it easier, so I don't have to create, 2 accounts for that kind of stuff. So you'll click on the GitHub link and log in. Mine's not a GitHub account, so I'm going to log in just through the regular stuff. Questions?
Thank you.
And you should come up to this where your workspace should just have one on the side. That's named P82FA19, unless you forgot to name it, in which case it's named something that looks like gibberish. But I'm going to click on there, and that will go ahead and get your workspace set up. It takes a minute or like a minute and a half, 2 minutes for it to load. I already loaded mine up this morning, which is why it popped up. But you can see that one thing that you can do under Profile Preferences, there's an appearance. I switched mine to a light theme, not because I like light themes. I really prefer dark themes over light themes, but I know exactly. But the projector works much better with light themes than dark themes. So I use dark themes, but when I teach, I have to use light themes so we can look at it and be able to see it. So I switched mine to a light theme. You can switch yours to a light theme. There's only 2 themes, light theme, dark theme. Not a lot of customization at this point in this product, but you can be either. But probably just keep it as the dark theme, which will be fine for you. Another couple things that I think are good in the preferences under the editor. One is, and we're going to talk about this today, our tab size for this class will be 2, meaning that everything will be indented over 2 spaces. All right, so that's what the 2 is doing. The expand tab, the checkbox means that when you hit tab, it'll actually give you 2 spaces. Okay, so it's not going to insert a tab character, it's going to give you 2 space characters. All right, the 2 spaces makes it nicer to read, so when you get a lot of code that's indented, you're not like way over on the side. If the autosave bothers you, that when you type it autosaves, and I don't know why it would bother you, but if it does, you can uncheck it, and then you have to hit Control S, right, or File Save to save it. And then one other thing that's super annoying, some of you probably ran into it, is that it'll auto pair a bunch of things, parentheses, braces, square brackets, right, angle brackets, quotations, block comments, right? The one that we really care about is the angle brackets, because when we do cout, you'll do 2 less than symbols, and you don't need 2 greater than symbols right next to it, right? And instead of having to delete that over and over and over again, you could just uncheck that auto pair angle brackets.
How do you access preferences again?
So it was under Profile, and then Preferences. There's other stuff in there. If you don't want to auto pair anything, if you're like, I want to do everything myself, don't help me out at all, right? Then uncheck all of it. Right? That's up to you. That's personal preference. Hence why we're in preferences. The other thing that is important, some of you did it because the command line forced you to do it, but Git needs a name and an email address in order for you to commit your work and then also submit it to GitHub. So if you haven't done that in the command line where it said you had to do git config user.email, git config user.name, you can just put it in there. So you can just say, right, put in your name and put in your email address. And then it should save it so you won't have to worry about that. That's really all in here that you really need to do. So once again, right, appearance, I just did light themes so you could see what I'm doing. Big things, editor, right, tab size of 2, right, and then uncheck auto pair angle brackets. I would say those would be the most useful things for us. Any questions on what I did there? All right. You don't have to do any of those things. You can still do the whole class without doing any preference changes. But I think the preference changes will help you out. Andrew.
Are we following Google's formatting or anything? So
we are, and I'm going to talk about that today. And built into our how we build and run is what we call a linter. So that's a style checker. So it's going to check your code to make sure that you wrote it in the style that we're looking for this semester. So once you get used to the style that we write, you'll run the style checker and you'll never have style errors. But it only takes about a month or a month and a half. But eventually we'll all get there. It's really useful as a programmer to be able to switch from one style to another, because one job that you'll have will say we write style a certain way, and one other job will say we write a different way. So we have to be able to kind of switch contextually to what we're doing. Or different languages have different styles. Write JavaScript a certain style, write Java a certain style, write C++ a certain style, even in the same company that you're working. Questions so far? I also hid the, right, you probably maybe have a double, right, with the bottom pane and the top pane. But if you just put processes, it'll come up a little way. Right? Some of you have worked in a terminal before. Some of you, it was this weird text-based thing that you had to type in. Right? We're going to do a lot with the terminal this semester, and you'll see today some of the commands that you'll really need to do. Right? On Canvas is a link to a tutorial on the command line. On Canvas is a link to a tutorial on Git. So those are things that maybe you might want to go through to kind of get up to speed on what we're doing. And hopefully, if you did everything correctly on Monday, right, you have a PA2FA19 folder, although yours says PA2FA19 dash and then it has your username, right? And then you should have 3 folders: class examples, helpful files, and labs. Right? Class examples have all the class example code that we'll go through, right, including the code that I skipped on Monday, right? That's in there. But right, today's lecture 2 code will be in there. Everything will be in there. Right? Helpful files, really nothing in there for you to do, besides the fact that there's a basic starter boilerplate thing to get us going. And then obviously the labs, and you guys worked on lab 1 on Monday, and even if you didn't finish it, right, we'll have some time today to complete it as well. But by the end of today, you really want lab 1 and lab 2 done, right? Saved, committed to CodeNV, and then pushed up to GitHub. And we're going to go through all those steps today to make sure that you have that kind of workflow there. Does that make sense? Anyone have questions so far? No? Okay. We're doing good. So in the terminal, you'll see that this says /projects. All right, /projects is like a directory below where all of our other stuff is. So if I do a command called ls to list all the files and folders where I am, you'll see that the only thing that pops up is PA2FA19, right? The one folder that actually exists. So if I scroll up in the Projects Explorer, right, I have one folder, PA2FA19. So to get into that, we use a command called cd for change directory. That's your shorthand to remember it. So cd allows us to change a directory. I hit space, and then I can start typing, right, PA2FA19. Mine's nice because I don't have the dash in your username, but one thing that you can do in the terminal is tab completion. So if I do PA2 and then I hit tab, it will auto-complete anything that starts with PA, right, and then since you only have one thing, it'll auto-complete for that.
If you have more than one, can you cycle?
If you have more than one, I think in this terminal you can't, but if you hit tab, it'll go as far as what is the same, and type one more character. And then, right, if I wanted to get into any of my other directories, I would just start typing those as well. So if I want to get into the labs directory, I'd say labs. If I want to get into the labs 1 directory, right, you'll notice each directory separated by a /. Right? That's where I'd want to get if I wanted to build and compile, right, lab 1. If I wanted to build and compile lab 2, I'd go /2. Right? One other thing that you can do is that if I was in the labs 2 or labs 1 directory, notice I'm already in 1. 2's not in 1, right? I have to go back. And to go back, I use 2 dots. So if I do cd ... right, that takes off the 1 and back to the labs directory. Okay. And then to get to the labs 2 directory, I do cd and then lab. I'm already in labs, so I would just do cd 2. Right, hit enter, and that will take me to my lab 2 directory. All right, and inside of there, I can just say make, and that should build it. All right, you'll notice that today's lab 2, it'll actually build, right, no errors. But if I run it, I'm not going to pass all the tests. Right, I get a lot of warnings. Warnings are bad things that you should fix. But theoretically, it says that it runs, and I can say lab_2, and it will run for me.
Failed.
Right, and look, how many tests did I pass?
0.
0 out of 7, right? So you're going to get that feedback on your labs that says, oh, I passed this, I didn't pass that, right? Sometimes, like the baseline ones, they'll say pass 2 out of 7, right? That's just because whatever that test is, right? Currently, on default, it actually works just fine. Does that make sense? You have questions so far? All right, you ready to learn some stuff? That's the cue, right? You're supposed to say, yeah, let's learn. Or do you want to relearn some stuff, right? That's kind of what we're going to do today. We're going to relearn, right, some stuff and start working on these things. So I'm going to create a new file to work in. Open it up. It wants to. Maybe it wants to. It's always good when things don't work right at the beginning. This stuff is waiting. Oh, there's line 1. That's an example.
Instead of updaters for the branch maps,
There we go.
Oh, that one works. Yeah, apparently auto added the extension in here. There we go. I don't know why class examples are there. We'll just deal with class. All right. So here we are, right? And in C++, we need some, right, what I call boilerplate stuff that you just need to make your program run, but really, right, it doesn't do anything else besides just setting things up. So first thing I'm going to do is what? Pound include. Right, don't call it a hashtag, please. Pound include. IO string. Right, so we bring that in. Right, then some using statements, std cout, using std cin. Those are 2 colons. And using std end out. Can you guys see that in the back? Is that big enough? I can make it.
Yeah, that's good.
Is that better?
I'll make it smaller so we can see more things.
Like this?
I can still read that.
I can still read it too.
Yeah.
There we go. We're gonna leave it at that. That's what it was. Sometimes all you have to do is make it really small for like 2 minutes and then put it back to like what size it was before and it looks really good. Alright, so that's all we need there. And then we need main. So for us, int main, parens, curly brace. And at the end, we say return parens. It's weird. Reflexively, my fingers want to say Control S every time I type, but it autosave, so I don't have to do it. I have to retrain my brain as well to do that. Just a reflex all the time. Control S. Control S. Did you save it? Yes, I saved it. Control S. I have to ask you that in this class. It's autosaved. That's a program for C++ that does absolutely what? Nothing. But without it, can you do anything? No. Okay. Great. So we're going to get used to that. If you forget, right, then you could go to helpful files. Go figure. There's something helpful, right? And starter.cpp has that, right? Starter.cpp has more, including how I want you to kind of comment the top of your code, right? Includes that you'll need, and then how to write functions and how to write comments for those functions. That kind of has everything in it that you are going to need. All right. So first thing I want to talk about are our arithmetic operators or arithmetic operators, right? Meaning what operators? What do? They do math, right? So we have our math operators. And what are operators? Do you remember the example I gave you? They do operations, right? Symbols that do shit. If that helps you a little bit as well, right? That's the best way to get it. They do something, right? And the math operators do what? Math, right? So we have math operators. We have 5 of them. What are they? Plus, which does what? Add. Did I mention this class might start a little easy, but it will get hard, don't worry. Right? Today we'll just do some easy stuff. Addition, what else? Minus, which does what?
Subtract.
Subtraction. Did you know the minus is also a what? It's a negative sign as well, right? So in C++ we actually have two operators. A subtraction operator, which takes two things, and a negation operator, which takes one thing. But we'll get to that. What else we got?
Forward slash.
Forward slash, which does what?
Divide.
Division. Oh, modulo. We'll get there, right? So mod.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You'll notice that it's the same slash, right? That's how I try to remember which one's right does division and which one doesn't. I just look at my percent sign. Oh yeah, it flows that way. Then that must be that one, right? Mod does what?
Remainder.
Remainder of what? It's really important. What kind of division? Well, okay, long division.
Decimal.
But for us, not decimal division, right? So for us, right, we have to think in terms of types, integers, floating points, booleans, that kind of stuff. So mod does integer division and gives you the remainder of that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
No floats.
No floats. Doesn't work on floats. Will not compile with floats. And then we're missing one thing.
Star.
Good. The star, which does what?
Multiplication.
Multiplication. Later on, it will do stuff with pointers. But for
Yep.
now, just multiplication. Right? So these are our five operators written in reverse, right? Precedence order. Right? These three have the same precedence, and then these two have the same precedence. Okay? Same precedence means whatever comes first happens first. Okay, remember last class we said the Sine operator goes right to left, right? All these operators read left to right. So it's whatever comes first in the precedence order that's going to happen first. Everyone good there? I hope we're good there, right? We should feel pretty good, right, about that. I can do things like C out 6 plus 9, right? And that should do what? Add 6 and 9 together and output it. So let's do it. Right? 6 plus 9 is what? 15. Okay. There's one big thing we need to talk about. 6 and 9 are both what? When it comes to type. They're integer, right? And we call them integer literals. Right? 6 and 9 are integer literals. Okay. And so one big thing that we have to remember is that an int plus an int, right? 6 an integer, 9 an integer, you add them together, and what do you get back? You get an int, okay? You will always get an integer back if you do math operations on two integers, okay? We good there? All right, if I do 6.1, I type 6.1, divided by 9, or plus 9.2, and I do the same thing, right? I get 15.3, because right, I'm going to say float or double, right? A floating point number plus a floating point number gives me a what? I don't know what flat is. Gives me a float. Always. Right, that's the rule. Floating point plus a floating point gives me a floating point. Okay? And I'm doing addition, but that works for all of our math operators, right? Addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Can I do mod with these? No, I can't do mod with these. So it won't work for mod. Okay. You want to see the error message? Just for fun. I do want to say too, what am I doing down in the terminal? Right? A lot of times we're used to like hitting the play button or some, right? Build, run, that kind of stuff. For our labs, we type make. Make is a wrapper around a program called G++, which is the compiler. So G++ is the compiler that allows us to take C++ code and compile it into, right, executable code. And so G++ is the compiler. So I can just say G++, and then I can say what file I want to compile, right? By default, if it works, I get a program called a.out. On Windows, you get a program called a.exe, right? So here I get a program called a.out. To run it, I just say /a.out, but I need to rerun it every time. So G++, class.cpp, right? And then, right? Did it build? No. Can you guys see this on the Mac? Yeah. Okay. Error. Well, it's the only thing in the terminal that's colored. Kind of nice, right? Right? Invalid operands of types double and double. What are operands? I said that last class. The things around the thing that does shit, right? So the both things, right? So I have an operand 6.1, and I have another operand, 9.2, and this symbol is trying to do something on those two operands, but it says they're of the wrong type, right? Because mod only works on what? Integers, not on doubles.
So if this is a Windows computer, how come you're using it looks like a bash terminal?
Yeah, because remember, I'm running it in this code in the environment,
It's like a
which has CentOS behind the scenes, so it's a VM. Yeah, so I'm in a full Linux environment. And then like on my Windows machine, you can install something called the Windows subsystem for Linux. And so I run Ubuntu on my Ubuntu terminal straight on Windows, right? It's not even a VM, it's like running in native Windows, which is kind of cool. So that doesn't work, right? Mod doesn't work on that. Let's go back to addition. What about 6.1 plus 9? Is that gonna work for me? I build it, did it build? /a dot out, 15.1. Does this work in Go? I don't know the answer. Go doesn't like to convert automatically for you, so it might not work in Go. Go wants all your types to be exactly what they're supposed to be. No implicit conversion. So I don't think it'll work in Go. But what do I have here? I have a float plus an int, and what do I get? Float, very nice.
I was just gonna ask, is there any situation where you prefer printf over cout?
For us, not really. There are lots of places in actual programs where you use that, but normally be a decision at the very beginning. Am I going to use printf or am I going to use cout? Just don't use them together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pick one or the other.
Pick one or the other. Everyone good so far? Any
No, I
questions?
didn't hear any of it.
Oh, that's fine. It wasn't for you anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Now, right, we come to our problems, right? 6.0 divided by 9.0, right? And we'll go ahead and build it and run it, right? And what do I get for an answer? Oh, that's plus. I said divide. This is called a logic error, where you think your code is doing one thing, but it actually does something else, right? Who was wrong in this instance, me or the code?
The code, obviously.
The code, obviously, me, right? Logic errors are the worst. Because you think that right? I'm smart, I know what I'm doing, and then, right? 6 divided by 9 gives me 0.66 for forever, right? Obviously, the computer can't store 0.66 for forever, right? So at some point it has to round and give all that. Right? Because a floating point divided by a floating point gives me a what? A float, right? But if I do 6 divided by 9, and I build it, and I run it, right, what's my answer? It's 0. Why is it 0? Because an int divided by an int gives me a? Nope. That'd be nice. Right? But we have types, right? An int,
They give you
right?
decimal.
We said the rule was an int, some math operation, and an int gives me a what? An integer. It does not switch for division. So if I take 2 ints and I divide them, I get a integer. And does an integer know anything about the decimal point?
No.
No. Does it round?
Nope.
No, it just truncates. So instead of, right, 0.66 or 1, I get
0.
0. Because an int divided by an int gives me a integer, right? That's integer division, which can cause lots of problems. Does that make sense a little bit? You cannot fix the problem by doing this. You cannot say double x, which is a terrible name for a variable, but that's okay. Double x6 divided by 9. Okay. What's the value of x? 0. 0. Or even better, what's the value of x? 0.0. Because x is a what? A double, so it can only hold what? Floating points? Floating points have decimals, right? So what happens? Well, 6 as an integer gets divided by 9 as an integer. So you go what? 6 goes into 9, or 9 goes into 6 how many times? 0. Right? 0 gets stored into x. 0 integer gets stored into x. But x only holds what? Double. So it implicitly converts for you from 0 to 0.0. Right? All this is happening magically right behind the scenes for you. This does not happen magically in Go. Go gives you errors. you can make arguments for both cases that, yeah, I want it to do it automatically for me, or no, right? Weird things are happening that I don't want it to do automatically. Does that make sense a little bit? Any questions there?
So if you wanted that to work, you just put 6.0 and 9.0?
Yeah, so if you wanted to work, you go 6.0, 9.0, or really, the rule says just one side. So you do 6.0 or 9.0. You don't have to do. Anyone know what the answer to this problem is? Okay, 15.0. Well, math operation says, what do we do first? Division. Okay, so we have to look at this small part of the problem. That small part of the problem is a problem because it's two integers dividing each other, right? So that part of the problem returns an integer. That integer is 0. And I add 15.0, which is the floating point value. So the answer there is 15.0, which then gets stored into a double. So x's value is 15.0. Okay. A lot of times we're smart enough to realize if I'm just dividing two things, it's not a problem. But what happens is when I do a long math operation, then I get some integer division in the middle somewhere, right? Sometimes that's where we screw it. Make sense? All right, so let's talk about some stuff. If I have, which is what we've been doing this whole time. If I have x, which is 6, and I have y, which is 9, right, and I want the double answer to be something, right? And I want my answer, right, it makes sense that my answer, I'm expecting a floating point value. But if I divide these two things, what kind of division do I get? Integer, right? So if I say, right, x divided by y, right, and then I see out my answer, this whole autosave thing's still throwing me off, right? Notice my answer is what? 0. So how do I get a floating point answer?
You get a floating point x and y.
So I could make x and y floats,
Or you can make one of them.
right? Or I can make one of them a float. But most of the time when we choose a type, there's a reason why we chose that type, right? So I made the decision that x and y, and obviously we don't have any idea of what those are, but I made them into on purpose. And in my program, I don't want them to be floating points because they're going to be whole numbers, right? I'm counting, right, how many buildings we have.
Are you talking typecasting?
So we have to do some kind of typecasting, right? And in C++, that typecasting is called static cast. And static cast allows us to change, right, a variable, and not really the variable, a value, right, to another type. Okay? Not too hard to do. Once again, we don't need both sides. We just need one side or the other to be a floating point in order for the whole operation to give me a floating point value. So I'm just going to do the first one. So I'm going to say static underscore cast, and then in my alligator jaws, right, I say what type I want it to go to. In this case, I want it to be a double. And then in parentheses, almost like a function call, right, we say what it is that I want to be a double. So this says take x, put it through the static cast machine, and really just take x's value, right? Because x is an int, it'll always be an int. Takes x's value, 6, put it through the static cast machine, and it comes back as what? 6.0, right? A double. And then a double divided by an integer gives me a double. So now my answer must be, instead of being 0, should be what?
0.66.
0.667. Good. You guys are paying attention. That's good.
So is a template function like a giant static cast?
Template functions are different. Template functions are you can write a bunch of code that's the same that works for different types. We will get to templates. The last class of the semester. Actually, it's the second to last class of the semester. Questions here? Okay. Where do students make mistakes? They do this. They say static cast, right? Hey, I want to float, right? Let's make that whole thing a float. What happens?
0.0.
You get 0.0 because you always do what's inside the parens first. X divided by y. Well, 6 divided by 9 is 0 as an integer, you put it through the static cast double machine, and you get back what?
0.
0.0, right? So timing, right, is important, right? Where am I going to do the static cast, and what am I doing it on? Questions there? That was the small complicated bit, but not too complicated.
I have another question.
Yeah, what do you got?
When you do the int and sign and then like quarters or some other thing, is there a difference if that n percent or the n percent is in front of the variable as instead of directly after the int?
There could be. I'll talk about the lab eventually,
Okay.
but not yet. We gotta get there. We'll get there. I'll show you the lab. The ampersand, this guy.
Yeah, isn't that a reference?
Yeah. It can be a lot of different things. That'll be the memory address of the variable. Okay, you ready for something really easy? If x is 1, I can say x plus plus, and now x is what? 2. Or I can do x minus minus, and it's down 0. Wow, that was easy. Can I do plus plus x? You can. And that also is what? 1. Or sorry, 2. If I do minus minus x, it'd be 0.
And that's it, increments before.
Okay, so why does it matter, right? Why do we have both? Well, let's look at that example. So if I had int y equals 2 times x plus plus, right? The plus plus says, where do I increment? Okay, at the end of this, we know x is going to be what? Well, it was 1. I'm going to add 1 to it, so it's going to be what? 2. But is it 2 times 2? Or is it 2 times 1, right? Which value of x, right? So it's all about timing, right? So really, we're talking about precedence, right? Where is the precedence for this increment operator, right? And in fact, the precedence depends on if you put it at the end or you put it at the beginning, okay? Put it at the end says we do it afterwards, right? So this would say 2 times x, well, x's value is 1. So y's value becomes 2. And then x increments to 2 as well. Okay, remember, it's weird because I'm doing 2 things, right? I'm doing storage, right, with the assignment operator for y, but I'm also affecting x, okay? But x's effect doesn't happen to y afterwards. All right, and so if I, see out x in a space, a colon, and y, a new line, if I do that, and I run it, right? Notice the values are both 2. X's value is 2, and y's value is 2. If I change that plus plus to instead be before it, okay, and no, you can't do both, one or the other. Okay, if I do that, right, and notice that x's value is still 2, right? Because I always added 1 to x, so it was always 2. But y's value is now what? 4, because now it says increment x first, because the plus plus comes before, and then multiply. So x becomes 2, 2 times 2 is 4. You don't care about anything I just said? Just don't do it in expressions, right? I'm trying to do 2 operations at the same time, which is where it gets confusing, right? If I want to increment x before, well, just increment x before and then do something with it. If I want to increment it afterwards, do something with y and x and then increment it afterwards. You don't have to do both at the same time, right? I just happen to do both. Questions there? That's the one confusing thing about it. All right. Do you remember what escape sequences are? No. You're like, it's the thing I do at the end of class to get out of here. Right, so inside of quotes, we have a bunch of them. We can do \n, which does what? New line. \r does a carriage return for those people that love Windows so much. T does a tab. A theoretically makes a ding, although normally it doesn't, right? If you're inside of single quotes, right, you can do that to get a single quote inside of it. If you're inside of double quotes, which I am now, if I want a double quote inside of my double quotes, I have to do \double quote. Because double quotes mean something, right? They're terminating characters for strings. So if I want that inside of a string, I need to do \double quote. And \/ is now a special character as well. So you need 2 backslashes in order to get 1 backslash. Right? 2 backslashes make 1 backslash. The backslash itself is a special. Right? Which ones do we actually use? Backslash in, right? Backslash, right? Double quote. T not as much because you can just put a tab inside of it, but you can't, right? And then did I say double backslash? Yeah. Right. And then really backslash in is the one that you'll probably use the most. Okay, literals are values that don't change, right? Integer literals, 1, 2, 3. Double literals, 1.0, 2.2, 3.3. Can we go with that? Right? What are variables that don't change? What do we call those?
Constants.
Constants, right? So constants are variables that don't change, meaning that we want to store a value in them and use that for the rest of the program, but we don't want it to ever change. Okay, fun fact. Who are constants for? That might sound like a weird question, but who are constants for?
People who don't want the other numbers to be edited.
So people that don't want the other numbers to be edited, who is that person that's writing the code? Programmers. So who are constants for? Programmers. They're not for the code themselves, okay? Does that make sense? Constants are protection for you, the programmer, when you do something dumb, okay? And this semester, const, which is the modifier we use to make constants, is going to show up in a lot more places than just a variable. Okay, but every time you see const, it's all about protection for the programmer, right? Not for the user, not for C++. It makes your life easier, okay? Because when you say constant, right, you say, I don't want this to change, right? You're making something read-only, okay? And there's lots of reasons why we would want to do that. So I do const, k max num of students, very verbose, right? I need to give it a type. I don't think I can have half students, so we're going to do an int, right? And we're going to say that the maximum number of students I can have is 24. I define, basically what have I done? I've named 24 as k max number of students, right? That's all I've done. I just named it, right? But now I basically said 24 is a special number in my program that corresponds to the max number of students. And for the rest of my program, I don't want to use the number 24 when I work with students. I want to use what? K max number of students. K for constant, right? Because programmers, they don't like to spell, so they do weird things like that, right? I would use this anywhere in any math that I'm doing, right? Any function calls that I'm doing, any array creation that I'm doing, right? I would use that. What's the benefit? Besides it doesn't change? What if I want it to change? What can I do? Later on, someone tells me, oh, actually, you have to take 30 students, not 24 students. And instead of trying to find 24 everywhere I used it in my program, I just go to my constant and change the 24 to what? 30, right? 25, yeah. I don't want 30. I'm going to go 25. Right? And then just recompile. And then that change propagates out to the rest of my code, which is super useful. Okay? We use them a lot when we create like fixed size arrays, right? And then other places as well. So then we have that. It is an integer, so I can like see out it, right? K max number of students. All right, and it's 24. What it prevents though is that later on, and obviously you want to do it right afterwards, but if I want it to be 25 now, I try to do it. All right, I get an error, right? Assignment of read-only variable k max number of students, because I made it read-only by saying const. I said const, read-only, can't change it later on. If you want to change it later on, then it's not a constant, right? So don't make it a constant. But overall, it's protection for you that later on in some other piece of code, you try to change it, and then you're like, oh yeah, I'm not supposed to change it, right? And the compiler will pick it up and make sure that. Questions there? Good so far? We're doing good? We're almost there. Of course, I can never tell what time it is because this computer says it's 2:52 a.m. Which maybe that's why you guys are all tired.
No, class isn't over yet. 2:53 a.m.
Exactly. Some of you are like, that's what time I was up last night. I was not updating that. I swear I changed it too, to know exactly. It's probably all related to how terrible these machines are. Okay, let's talk about style real quick, and then we'll get into today's lab. But there's all my notes. Make sure that I hit everything. Okay, let's do this. Look, there's everything. So everything that I talked about today, you'll have like because I don't have a book, right? But it's all there. All right. So you can re-look at those. They're on Canvas, right? If you have questions. Let's talk about code style. So code style doesn't have anything to do with how we algorithmically make our code. Code style has to do with how it looks when we type it. So once again, it's not for the compiler. It's for who? Us, the programmer. And really, in this class, who's it for?
You.
Me, the teacher, right? We all write to the same code style, then I can actually read what the hell's going on in your code because it's not all on one line. So it's very important to always be consistent in the way you write your code, regardless of whether in this class I'm making you or you're just doing it on your own, right? You don't want to like start writing code and half of your variables are plural and half of your variables aren't plural. Half of them are underscores between them, and half of them are camel case, right? It's not a good practice to go back and forth, right? You want to stick to a code style and make it work. What does it do that helps us read our own code? It helps other people that are writing the same style of code, right? Like in your job, be able to read your code as well, all right? It also actually makes it easier to modify later on. It makes it easier for you to come back to your code at a later time and figure out what the heck is going on with it as well, all right? And code style really talks about everything that we write. So how do we write it and what does it look like? So comments are important, right? You may not think so, but they are, right? And so we will be commenting our code this semester. 2 forward slashes, pretty typical for comments. /star to start, multi-line comments, and /star to start them, // to end them, right? You don't need to comment every line of code. I don't know if you had to in previous classes or not, but I don't need like create a variable int x, assign the variable the value of 5, x equals 5, adding 5 to that variable, x equals x plus 5, right? I don't need every line of code comment. I don't want to read it. No one else wants to read it, right? Remember I told you in the first class you were babies, and now we decided you're something that's not a baby, right? Yeah. I haven't figured out exactly what we are yet, but we're not that. Okay, so you don't have to write comments as if you and I don't know how to create a variable, and you and I don't know how to add 5 to a variable. Does that make sense? Right? Programmers don't need comments for that, because they know that when they see x plus 5, what are they doing? They're adding 5 to x. Does that make sense? Okay, so what do we need? What are comments for? Well, describe a block of code. What is a block of code? Right? Some loop, some if statement, some function, right? Blocks of code normally encompassed in curly braces. Okay? So, describe a block of code, right? This code is dealing with how to make change, right, from money. That's one of the things you'll do in your lab today, right? So there's some comments about that. Right? If something's important, like, hey, this is a tricky thing I did, this is what it does, right? So something is when it's not obvious, right? So when you start doing, right, adding 1 to x with plus plus and multiplying it by something and putting it into a function all at the same time, you might want to write a little comment that says, this is what it does, right? You might think it's for other people, but I bet you when you come back like 2 weeks later and you look at it, you're like, I have no idea what this code's supposed to do, right? So put it there so it reminds you what it's supposed to do. Does that make sense? You'll get used to my comments because you're going to see them in the labs like every class. You'll see it in my, well, I didn't comment anything in the sample code I did today, but it'll show up. Here's some other rules. We do indent things. We do look at whitespace to make things more readable. We have naming variables and naming constants. I actually have line length, like how many characters you should put on a line. So let's talk about a couple of those. So blocks of codes are always indented. I said blocks of code are inside of what? Curly braces. So anything inside of a curly brace should be indented over. Okay? Very beginning of class, I set code envy up to only do 2 spaces, because that's what we're going to do in this class. So when you hit tab, where you do 2 spaces, you should indent over 2 spaces. Okay? Some people like to do like the tower of indentation where every line is indented over and the next line is indented over and the next line is indented over, right? Don't do that, right? Everything inside of a block of code will only be indented over 2 spaces. If there's a block of code inside of that block of code, then you go 2 what? More spaces. If there's a block of code inside of that block of code, then you're over 6 spaces. Okay? But not every line keeps going until, well, this way for you, right? Keeps going until you hit the nose way. Right? Only when you go into another block of code do you go over. Why do we indent?
Make it look cool.
Make it look cool? Well, I think the tower, the pyramid looked pretty cool, right? But why do we indent?
So people can see where the blocks are.
So you can see where your blocks are, right? You can keep track of what code is inside of what block of code, right? Oh, all this code is part of this function because it's all indented over 2. Oh, all this code is part of this if statement because it's indented over what? 2. Zach, you had a question?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, do people actually do that, like create like LA tower?
Do actual programmers?
Yeah,
No, not really.
so it's just like students,
Yeah, sometimes. I've seen a lot over the years.
well,
It can be confusing, and this is nothing to say that that person was doing anything wrong. Sometimes you get confused about what thing belongs to what thing, and so you're just like, oh, I know my professor said I better indent, well then I better just start indenting. So it looks indented. All right, and if I see that in your code, I'll just make a little comment that says, well, we need to move this back a little bit. There are auto formatters out there too that will help you do that, but it's good for us to do it without the help of an auto formatter. Make sense? Good. So 2 spaces, don't use tabs. Remember, we have tabs set up to automatically add spaces. So you can hit tab in code NV and it will give you 2 spaces or 4 spaces. That's okay. But we don't like the tab character. Right? Look, it's indented over. How many spaces? 2 spaces, right? It's indented over 2 spaces. Whitespace is important, right? You'll notice that after like closing parens, right? I do a space and then curly brace. Right? Give a little bit of white space to just make it more readable. Too much white space also makes things not readable, so there's a fine line between the two. Right? Don't put spaces after semicolons, that's weird. But you notice that it's not I equals 0 with no spaces, right? I space, assignment operator space 0, semicolon. Stupid semicolons. And then if I haven't told you whether you should have spaces or not, then do spaces or not, just be consistent. Right? Don't do a space at the beginning and no space at the end, right? Be consistent in the way that you write. Questions on spacing? Okay, even more important is how we name our variables. We talked about this a little bit last class, but name your variables with descriptive names, right? Price count reader, num errors, number of DNS connections, right? That kind of stuff, right? Why? Well, you don't have to document your code with comments because the name of the variable tells you what it does, right? If I said, right, creating variable for DNS connections, and then I said int x, right? Well, that would have worked, but then everywhere else x, I'd have to go back to the documentation and figure out, okay, oh yeah, x was supposed to be for DNS connector, right? Just name it nicely, and it's not a problem. Right, so like today, where you're gonna do that make change, right? Don't name it X, Y, Z, I'm running out of things, and A, right, for quarters, dimes, nickels, and pennies, right? Name them what? Quarters, dimes, nickels, and pennies. And then you know which one it is. You don't have to be like, oh crap, what's Y? It's something. Naming is one thing that you'll see me, right, a lot of times in examples, because they're kind of esoteric examples, I'll use X, Y, and Z. Right? But that's one of the things like do as I say, not as I do. Right? Don't make ones that don't make sense, right? They better make sense to you and someone else who's reading it. That's the idea. I don't know what WGC is. File names, we do underscores, right? So if you do more than one word, which a lot of times you won't, but you do underscores between them. Constants are weird. We use K's, right? So K days in a week. Right? K number of students, right? Max number of students we did. Right? K maximum array size. Right? K is for what? Constant, right? We name it differently, so later on in our code, if we see a K, we know that that is a read-only variable, right? The name itself reminds me that it's a constant. Okay? If you just make it, right, X, Y, or Z, we forget whether it's a constant or not. that make sense? We're almost there. Right? We are talking about this. Variables should have underscores between them. Right? Some people call it snake case, right? We have this, right? Name of the variable that has underscores. This is probably too long of a name for a variable, I would guess, right? Because you're gonna have to be writing it as well. But if that's what it needs to be, then that's what it needs to be. Line length shouldn't go over 80 characters. This is to prevent people from doing a lot of horizontal scrolling, right? In our code, we want to do one scroll, which is up and down. We don't really want to do horizontal scrolling back and forth. All right. I have not in coding, I haven't figured out yet. A lot of times you can make a little line to call it a gutter, which tells you how many characters it is. For now, just the style linter will tell you if you've gone over 80 characters. And then we said what? 2 spaces instead of 1 tab, right? 2 spaces instead of 1 tab. And then this is just a pet peeve, but when you say return, right? Return a keyword. After that comes some value you want to return. It's not a function. You don't need parentheses on it. All right. You can add parentheses and nothing will happen. You don't need them, so don't put them in. But it's the same idea that in code you can add curly braces wherever you want, and your code will probably still work as long as you open and close them correctly. But they're not needed. Right? Don't just endlessly add curly braces. Right? Don't endlessly add parentheses because you're afraid that it's not. You don't want to be guilty of just adding curly braces because you're like, it's not compiled. Let's just add curly braces all over the place. You can admit to it. It's okay. Right, we're gonna fix you up that this time.
It sometimes works.
It sometimes works, right? You're like, ah. The worst is the closing curly brace, because you're like, well, crap, was it supposed to be on line 20 or line 180? Because the error's on 180, that doesn't mean that's where the closing curly brace was supposed to be. You can't just add them in, right? What helps you figure out what's supposed to be closed? Indentation, right? If you indent correctly, it's really easy to see, oh, everything's lined up here, and then something comes back, but there's no closing curly brace between the two. Right, so indentation's really important. Questions there?
Are we gonna go over the enumerators?
We will. Yeah, and I haven't figured out if we'll do regular enumeration or if we'll do new style of enumeration.
I don't really know what that is.
Probably don't know, you're probably only done new style, but you do class enumeration or you can do. If you leave your workspace for long enough, it actually goes to sleep. This is the problem of having free workspaces. And they're like, oh, we're going to give those resources to someone else.
That's pretty awesome, though.
But it'll come back. Right? Did anyone go home and open up CodeMV and it was like the same place that they were? So.
What do you mean giving resources?
Well, they have some server farm, right? And so your VM's running, but then they want to close your VM. That way they don't have to have so many servers running.
Are they using your processing power?
No, they're not using mine. No, I'm using their processing power. Yeah, which is why you can do this on your phone. Anyone try it on your phone? Will it work? Yeah. I don't recommend coding on your phone. I don't think that's the best way to code.
Nah, I'm sure.
But I've had people do it on tablets and that kind of stuff. All right. Let's talk about a couple things for our lab. So I'm going to go CD, because notice I'm just in the /projects folder, which doesn't actually exist over here, right? But all of that stuff is inside of my projects folder. So I'm going to go CD, I'm going to go PA2FA19, right? I just tab completed it. I'm going to go labs. I'm going to go back to lab 1, right? And so here's my labs, right? I don't know if anyone ever knew, but there's a file called instructions that has what inside of it? Instructions.
Wow.
I know it's weird. Sometimes halfway through the semester, like, oh, did you read the instructions? What? There were instructions. Yeah, there actually are instructions. Lab 1, right, that's the file that you're supposed to do. And then this make file, it's magic for now, right? Eventually, it won't be magic, I'll teach you how to make them. But for now, it's magic. All right, and if you went into your labs, like, I read the instructions and they weren't helpful. Right, because all it said was what? Complete lab 1. Right, but in the command line, right, I gave you a couple things that you can do. You can type make, right? You can type make style, right? Make style checks, right, for things like, oh, you have too much white space, get rid of it, right? Or you have white space at the end of a line, so you have a semicolon, and then somehow you end up with more white space that you can't see, but those are taking up space, right? And so let's get rid of it. So right? And here's lab 1, and then you did something there. I hope we were full screen before. Maybe not. Oh, this whole time you should have said, you should go full screen so we can see it. All right, so today's will look a little bit different because we'll do things in specific functions, and I'll show that to you. But right, we're supposed to do last class, we're supposed to do things like create a string variable and then username. Right. And then we could try to make it. Remember, you have to make it every time to see if it works. I still have error messages. Okay, but let's just assume that I don't have error messages. All right. There's a couple things. Right. Everyone see this README over here? The README, right, has how to add stuff, right, to what we call your Git repository, which is local on your machine, right, and then also how to put it up into GitHub. So git add dot, git commit dash m, and then whatever your commit message would be. Commit message is just like a simple comment that says like finished lab 1, or in the middle of lab 1, or added this feature, fix this bug. Right, that's what your commit message should be. And then you just do git push origin master. I think you can just do git push. I don't think you have to do the origin master. All right, you do that, you'll type your username, you'll type your password, and it will take all your files that you committed, and it will put them up to GitHub. Okay, Git and GitHub, it's version control. So don't think that if you submitted, right, by pushing, that's it. Okay, you can git add, git commit, git push as many times as you want. When I grade it, I just look at the most recent one, right? And in fact, when I look at the most recent one, it'll show me the history, right? It'll show you the history. So one thing that I'll let you do is like sometimes you write code to a certain point, and then you're like, okay, I don't know if I should go down path A or go down path B. And so you can save it and commit it right then, and then, right, you can go down path A. And if you don't like it, you can go back to where you were and go down path B. You need anything? No, just hang on. What else was I going to say? Okay, so that's how we get them there. So down in these are command line things. So down here you would do git, add, dot, right? That kind of stuff. You can say git status, and that will tell you what's changed, right? So here's what's changed. Notice there's also a git thing up here. So you can do git status there, and it'll show you the same thing, right? You can actually do git commit up here. You can do git add up here, and you actually do git push on your remotes. Right? I prefer this semester, I'm never going to talk about that again, because I want you to do a command line. Right? But some people really like their mouse. Okay, I guess you could use your mouse and do it. But I've given you all the commands that you need to do that. And quite honestly, in about a week, after you've done it like 2 or 3 times, it'll just feel natural. All this make from the command line and G++ from the command line. It's going to just start feeling natural as you do it over and over and over again. Does that make sense? So even if you finish lab 1, but you didn't do the git stuff, right? You need to do the git stuff to make it work. If you get something that says I can't commit because I don't know who you are, right? It gives you the commands to do it. Or once again, if you go to preferences and go to git, right? You can put in your name and email, and then you can do it that way as opposed to. Questions on any of that? Okay. Let's look at today's lab. You want to look at today's lab? Are you tired of me talking? Am I tired of me talking? Yeah. Yes, I am. Good answer. All right. Let's make that smaller. Let's make this smaller. All right. Hey, guess what? Third line on lab 2 says author, and then it says what?
Fill in.
Fill in. What is that your name?
Yeah.
Are you named Fill in?
Yes.
Maybe. But probably not. Probably not, right? So you should probably put what there? Your actual name. That's the only thing that you have to do at the top, and then you get into like don't alter, right? Don't change, right? Don't be overwhelmed by all the code. I try to give you comments on where you should do code. Don't miss this one though. In the middle, right? Above name, there's something that says create a constant named kpi, which is initialized to that number, right? Fill in is where you should probably create a constant named kpi. That's right, assigned to that number. Does that make sense? Should I give you this hint? Okay, here's your hint. A lot of students, because they're just used to it, makes the constant an integer. Constant kpi. But it should be a what?
Lower
A
double.
float or a double. We're just so used to, because all my examples are always ints, because ints are easy to write and easy to understand, but we have a bunch of other types. Okay. Okay, function 1 is called make change. Right, here's the lovely ampersands that Andrew was asking about. Now I can answer his question. Just ignore them. You don't have to do anything here. We're going to code here. So don't do anything with ampersands. Don't add ampersands anywhere. Just ignore them for now. Okay? What does make change do? Well, go figure. I wrote a bunch of stuff that tells you what make change is supposed to do. It's written actually in the style that we're going to get used to this semester, the style that you will write this semester. Which the style is a synopsis of what the function does. And then these at params tell me what each of these parameters are supposed to be. Okay, does that make sense a little bit? Overall, what does make change say? It says, I'm going to give you some value called initial value, right? And then you tell me how many quarters go into that value, how many dimes go into that value after you take the quarters out, how many nickels go, right, into that value after you've taken out quarters and dimes, and then, right, how many pennies are left over. Pennies should never be greater than what?
10.
Pennies should never be greater than 4. Because 5 pennies is a what? A nickel. Does that make sense? Right? Nickels probably can't be any higher than 1 either, huh? Because 2 nickels is a dime. I think nickels can never be more than 1
You
either.
could have 2 dimes though.
You can have up to 4 dimes. Maybe?
What?
No.
2 dimes.
2 dimes. I can't do math. And then you can have as many quarters as you want, right? That's the biggest number. We're not working with 50-cent piece or dollar bills or anything like that. Does that make sense a little bit? Okay, what's the hint? Someone was trying to say it earlier. What's the hint? What do I use? I don't need a loop. I'm talking about loops, so I'm not expecting you to do anything with loops yet.
I don't even know what this is supposed to do. Well,
Makes sense.
Mod, because, okay, what does it do? If I have 131 pennies, let's say, right? $1.31, right? I want to know how many quarters, how many dimes, how many nickels, and how many pennies. Well, how many quarters goes into 131? Maybe. Well, this is what mod gives us remainder, what's left over. So you're not just going to use mod, you're also going to use what? Both of those. So you're going to use them in conjunction with each other.
depending on which, if you do quarters, dimes, nickels, and pennies first, you could have different,
Right, so you better start with what first?
quarters.
Right? If I'm not mistaken, this is 5 quarters.
Yep.
Right?
Wait, is that $1.31 or $131?
That's $1.31.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's coming in as an integer. Right? So it's $1. It's coming in as pennies.
Oh, okay.
Right? And even better, I know I answered it, but I'm going to be a little snarky. Right? It says parameter initial value, and it's the amount of change to be broken down in what? Pennies. So it's in pennies. I told it to you. Right? Go figure. I figure if I write it good enough, I can just show up to class and just like take a nap in the corner, right? I know my work beforehand.
We should have like a little thing that points to the instructions.
Yeah, right? Here's the instruction. Okay, and then theoretically, right, I gotta take 5 quarters out of that, right? Which is 131 minus 125. I'm doing it quickly in my head, right? Obviously, you're gonna have to do it
It's
programmatically.
1 nickel, 1 penny.
So,
Six left.
I have 6 left, which means how many dimes going in?
0.
0, and then how many nickels? 1, and then, right? 125, 130, 131, right? And so at the end of this function, remember initial value came in as what? 131. At the end of this function, quarters value should be what? 5, and dimes value should be
0.
0. Okay, listen. Don't assume that it came in as 0, right? If it's 0, set it to what? 0. Nickel should be 1, and penny should be 1. Does that make sense, algorithm, or logically what I'm asking for? And you gotta break it down logically, okay?
Yeah.
Integer division is your friend. Remember, division tells you how many times something goes into something else, right? That's what division gives us. Integer division says, we do that, but we don't care about what's left over. Well, what's left over is given to me by what? Mod. So what's left over after I've taken out my quarters, that's what mod gives me. Okay, those are some of your hints, and now you get to play around.
Could you help me pull the project?
Yeah, I'll help you with that. And then right? One of my favorite functions you'll write all semester long is the launch human cannonball. Okay? Launch human cannonball will have you, right, create the formula to launch a human cannonball. And how far will it go? Right? Good news is I gave you all the formulas, so you don't actually have to go look it up on Wikipedia or something. Okay? You get an initial velocity, right, how fast, and you get a launch angle, right? And given those two things, you can figure out how far the human cannonball is going to go. Right? You're like, there's more to it, right? I need to know how much they weigh, what's the wind speed. Right? It's a dumbed down version, okay? But it still will work.
Unladen.
Huh?
Is he laden or unladen?
I don't know. We'll just assume it's one or the other. Who knows? So I have some variables: initial velocity, launch angle, and then I'm telling you, right? These aren't variables. This is the formula. You might need to create some variables that are named the same as the formula. That makes it a little easier, right? But the radian angle, which I don't have yet, right, is the degree launch angle, which I do have, because if you read the comments, launch angle is launch angle in degrees. So it's that times k pi, which you already created, yes? Right? Divided by 1/8. Right, and then to calculate the x velocity, you take the initial velocity and multiply it by the cosine of radian angle. Well, crap. How do I figure out the cosine?
You see that?
Hopefully there's a way for me to do it, right? So bless you. Let's do this. Let's look at the instructions, right? The instructions say complete the two functions. You may need to do a little research on C math for the sine and cosine functions, okay? So sine and cosine functions are built in, right? So you might have them, right? But you might have to read a little bit, or let your, right, neighbor in the class do the reading for you and then just steal what they do. I mean, either or.
That sounds like what I.
Solid idea.
Since we haven't really talked about functions yet in the class, first word in the function is the return type. It's what the function produces. Okay, the other function didn't produce anything, it was void. This function produces a double. So you notice that the last thing says return double. Represents the horizontal distance the human cannonball will travel. Okay, a lot of students will do all the calculations. They will get the right answer, but they won't return the right answer, so their tests fail. Okay? One way for me to test it is for after you do all the work, you return that value, right? So then I can take that value and make sure it's the right value. Does that make sense a little bit? Otherwise, what it returns is garbage, right? Some garbage double. So if you're going to do all the work to calculate it, then the last line should be return the thing I'm looking for, right? In this case, I think x distance, horizontal distance. Yeah, so just two functions for lab 2 today to finish. Right, once you finish them, git add dot, git commit dash m with the commit message, and git push. And then that'll give it me on GitHub, so then tomorrow I can look at those.
I pushed the first one.
Which is fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's the code.
Yeah, it's initialized.
Oh, you're just in. It's weird that it's not telling you where you are, but you're in the back.
Oh.
So CD space dot will go back one and then CD2. Let's take us forward. Now we're in the
You're returning the X to.
I have this. With this computer. So that's in the initial.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So coming right, let's just say this was 30. 30 mod 25 says after 25 goes into initial, how much is left over? So you would get, no, you get 5. So
And then this would just give you 0.
probably, but I don't think you want 5 backs because you don't, 5 quarters don't go in 30.
Oh, okay.
So it's not mod. You will use mod, but first you need to.
Yeah, there's something, there's an extra step where.
Yeah. You might think I'm going.
You should.
All right, and my hint was that you're only going to really use division and mod if you write it that correct. So if mod's not working for you,
And that should be there.
okay, now this is just when you want it.
Oh, that's what it's like. When no, it's like.
Just declared falls.
It's all initialized. What's that?
I just checked that. No, that's just a message, so we give it a message.
Oh, and then if you can figure it out, and I'm saying.
Make sure that it doesn't say like invalid.
This one right here.
Yeah, I need to
Yeah, no. And that's why I have to.
Do remember, for labs, it is okay to collaborate with other people. It is okay to ask me questions. I won't actually ridicule you. It just seems like I will, but when we get to lab time, I don't actually. Except for one.
So, you pointed out earlier, but your degree launch is listed here, but I'm sure you only have launch.
Right, because remember, those are just the formulas.
Yeah, so.
I'm trying to throw you off.
These all need to be initialized,
That
correct, or
could
no?
be your issue right there.
There's nothing called the degree launch. You only start with two values, initial velocity and launch.
Yeah, but then I don't bring in that. I don't bring that in like ahead of your enough.
Well, remember, parameters means the values coming into you. So you're gonna add.
Yeah, I already have those, but I still have to.
So if you want to use that,
Yeah,
you're
still
gonna
have to
initialize that
right?
to launching. Or you just call it launching without it.
I'm just gonna do launch angle. And then all those are. Yeah, fine.
Now get rid of your
Yep. That's clear. That's what.
That's great. Yeah. No, you're doing great. And then make sure, you're right, you do make space style on these today. So you make sure that style-wise, they're working with each other. Well, the user might input it, but for you in the function, initial value will just have a value. So you just assume that it has a value. So for me, in my head, when I wrote it, I just thought, maybe it's 131. Right? And then how would I break 131 down? Yeah. No CNs, no CIs. Everything's gonna come in to your function via your parameters, everything's gonna come out via return. Okay. So to go back, what is it? Maybe again, now, go back.
G++, and then the y.
Yeah, I exactly said so, wait, aren't you coming to us? You just keep one of this is what you want. You really want to.
You call where, something and you link it. Change your.
All this stuff is kind of deep or something.
No, I mean, like, can you look at Amazon?
Yes. So I had to give them the I had to I stable variable.
Yeah, sure. Looks like sure. I do a reverse, but we'll reverse. Just take your initial value and divide it by 25. That tells you how. Because you did it to make sure, like, going evenly. Remember, integer division will get rid of all that.
Yeah.
So you can store the quarters. Quarters equals initial value divided by 25. And then your initial value divided becomes initial value on.
Okay, so you did 130 multiplied by 25. It's like,
Lump off the extra.
Yeah.
You're gonna get the number.
I'll get the 5, which I stored in the quarters, right?
And then you do another calculation.
With the mod, you get, yeah.
Yeah.
Listen for your name when I call it, if you would.
So you wanna see what value they gave you?
This is my test to see if you actually listen to my voice or not.
So, you see.
Ooh, lots of counting there. Kevin. Zachary. Brian.
Here.
Eric. Timothy. Here. Justin. John.
Here.
Julia. Fabian. Jacob. Andrew. He's not listening. John. Cameron. Jerry. Aiden. Denzel.
Here.
Sophia. Missile. Amanda. What's again? Thomas.
I think I did that correctly.
Robert. Daniel. Ryan. And Chris.
You know, one on under, I think it
Yeah, so like, if you take 131 and you mod it by what you're trying to do, it tells you how much. So like, 131 divided by 25 is 5, right? But 131 mod 25. So it will take all the 25 down. Okay. And then you're walking through 25, 131. I just that won't work.
So one returns the other one mod returns.
Yeah, it's just this one.
So if I wanted to do like initial value or quarter, whatever.
You guys didn't know you had to do math this semester, did you? Programmers have to do at least a little bit of math.
No, you just.
Everybody else is working on the adult.
Sorry. So you just folks got the PDF, right?
Yeah.
Okay, nice.
You already, was I out?
I don't know, I did it at the end. See, I feel like, oh, I could have my deals.
What?
Just go on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get commit diagram in the check. What's the commit message?
Whatever you want. So I usually do update unless you're actually physically just changing the one.
What? Is it not updating for you? That's export,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you push the original. So then you just line of code. And then push everything.
So you don't get it.
Oh, so go over there.
Yeah, officially all is covered.
So I just expect you to do it.
Yeah, you don't get
Oh, so how can you do a yeah, over everything. I think you heard it. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just.
You're working with
Cannonball part?
I'm getting errors on both.
Yeah, for some reason it won't let me initialize the variables for the first function. Because I'm just trying to assign them so that I could start dividing them from the initial value, right? But it's just telling me that it's required as left operand of assignment, and it keeps pointing to the equal sign. I'm just because these are already initialized, right? I'm just trying to assign them, but I can't. Are you also having that problem?
No, it's giving me a different one. For this, you wanted us to make our own initial value, or?
Well, I mean, it doesn't really say because it just says given an initial integer value.
Because I wasn't sure if there was going to be one defined on the test he's using, or if we had to make one ourselves. I just assumed that the value would be on the test.
No, the test is just seeing if the logic works. It doesn't really have an initial value. So I just chose 146 because it's got 1 penny in it, so I can at least see if the pennies work. And I'm trying to initialize these variables so that I can do the logic in the next part where I take the initial value and then divide it by the quarters, right? And then, well, let me try that right now and see if that works.
oh, shit. Let me
It's telling me that's not right. It's already initialized, right?
Yeah, you should just be able to.
It doesn't even say it exists. It says you cannot. It says invalid operands of types int and int star.
Where do you have int star?
I don't know. It just says I cannot combine those operations because there's an integer here. I initialized initial value, right? That worked. If I delete all this. And then I just try to make it again. That worked. See, it didn't tell me that I made an error in here, but it's telling me all the errors in here because they weren't initialized. Wait a second. Unused parameter.
Yeah, because you have like dimes and nickels and you didn't use it below it, so it's.
I tried to initialize it. Oh, what does the ampersand mean?
That's the reference, meaning it doesn't change. It's just reading the value.
So if I say quarters equals 25, then it's initialized.
Yeah, that's what I did.
I guess. Yeah, let me try that.
No, it's just like you're
Yeah, it says that works. It just okay. It says unused parameter for dimes, nickels, pennies. It doesn't say unused parameter for. No, it says there's unused for initial value too. What the hell? It won't even let me initialize the damn variables.
Oh, no. I was in that.
Oh.
Yeah. And then you'll do you didn't get it without it.
No, I'm getting that now. No, I mean, I did the same thing with it, like this class last semester, or the end of it, but the files changed. We're not gonna sign it.
I'm trying to do.
Oh.
Is this something that you follow in programming?
I like that tells you specifically like how to compile
I define orders, all those things equal, yeah. But I'm trying to figure out how
just send me up,
differential
like,
value gets divided into like one other.
and I can actually click mine.
Isn't, from what?
Initial value is passed into the function, I think. When you compile it, it gets thrown in.
Oh, so it's already being.
You need an engineer case.
Yeah, but when I was talking, with, Luke, he said to assume that initial value has already been declared.
Wait, is it?
When I tried to compile this, right, it told me that all of these, if I'm not taking first, I tried to initialize.
When does physics start?
It tells me that,
What does physics start, 11?
no, it said something about like the right parameters or something.
Physics starts at 11.
Because I already finished.
All of these, I believe.
People need to know.
No, not the parameters.
Nothing for. I'd rather take a week break. We're gonna be on day anyways.
Oh, that's right.
Let's see if he has the
So I just took a break. I can't even do from home now. I could have used it. It's not big of a drag, it's not going to be
Let's see.
Oh, it works, yes.
I put a operator in the
Yeah, I'm gonna try to see what I can do over here.
Yes, you have that.
And future.
Oh, you said to read the
project assignments.
Yeah, I'm not even that, so.
This thing on that somewhat. I'm used to this. Oh, you know what you have to do? You have to create a constant, integer, CSCI. Set it to a number.
Yeah, I did that.
You get this on the calculator.
But I don't know if that means. But like if I give you that,
Define one. If you like,
Usually within your contract, if you like your salary or something to compensate for it, that's the leave or.
Over there, what I'm gonna check. Well, thing is that even if there's future vacancies, they would be paying us anyways.
Ballpark.
It's pretty rare.
Ballpark, you're wrong, right?
you have like three variables. For example, if you
That's pretty much that kind of, yeah. I think I just put initial about the year of declaring initial value too. I just didn't see that.
It's random because he had like quarters, he did all the calculations in quarters inside the variable quarters. Okay. I feel like some of these numbers here, the story values, but I just need to do it.
Yeah, but this one where I was building the
I changed it. I was putting all.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I'm not returning it. I don't know why I was thinking. Well, because I asked.
It's already
Did you return something?
It's just, I think all the rules.
Get rid of that, that shit.
Yeah, you'll probably give it destruction or something.
It's
those are very specific.
I don't think we need to.
Well, some of them, yeah, so cannonball, that's fine. Zero was.
I don't think that very
Just get ready your answers.
What am I doing? Yeah,
Ampersands go away. Yeah, so what are the games? So you really want to
I can't use your field now, right, real quick.
Yeah, he was nice.
Young, old.
Yeah.
So you would just. If you figured out how to store, let's just say you have the initial value and you divide it by 25, and you get how many quarters are in there. How do you have to store that value and then divide how many dimes are in there and so on? Is that what you did? So initial value divided by quarters, okay. By quarters divided by dimes. Okay, yeah. Yeah, there you go. Because because you would divide by the amount of quarters, and that's how many quarters are in there.
Then you take the remainder.
Yep. And then initial value, mod quarters, and then the remainder divided by.
So this is what I will clone down to my machine when I do this.
Did you initialize all the variables first?
Yours is private, but I'm in that.
Because you have to initialize what value quarters have, what value dimes have. Because, yeah, so quarters are 25, dimes are 10. Yeah, because what you just did works.
I log in from here. Stashing moves things off to the side so you can kind of work. Let's get it right around. So all you have to do is really place now. This is basically like
Wow.
But that doesn't work.
You got initialize it, yeah.
Maybe you can't combine.
Like when you.
No. The ampersand, doesn't that mean that it doesn't change as you assign it? So, tiny problem. This doesn't work. Now, I don't know why it doesn't work, because I think you're supposed to store that information somewhere. Because all you're doing is dividing it, and then it doesn't go anywhere. Because when you say initial value divided by quarters, where's that value? Isn't it supposed to be equal to something? You could say it's equal to quarters, right? And then the next one, you say it's equal to how many dimes there are? Yeah.
What do you mean?
Let me try this. Because when you're doing that logic, right? Let's just say you take initial value is like 100 and 100, right? You divide it by quarters. 100 divided by 25 is 4. Where's 4 going? Where's that being stored?
Oh, right.
Well, I mean, it's a void function, so it's not trying to help underneath.
Oh, it's not out.
Yeah.
Where does that information go then? How do we know that there's that many quarters in there? Because I tried that and it does.
I think the test is supposed to output the information.
I didn't pass any of the tests.
Yeah. I want to test actually.
I'm not entirely sure because the logic is right. Because you have the quarters, but then it just says it's to no effect.
This one's actually on changes.
Yeah, I don't know what.
Before I had it just single equal sign, and it was good as ever.
Yeah, I think,
Did you try working on the other one?
I don't even know where to start on that. It's like, I guess we're supposed to start defining some of that stuff. Like I have to type that in at least.
yeah, right. And make is a wrapper around G++ that will
Okay. It's saying that because there's no assignment. So this will give you a value, but then that value is not being stored.
See, that's what I thought the problem was. But where do you store that information?
Well, I mean,
Because if you store an initial value, then it just keeps changing, right?
I think this theoretically is quarters. Right.
Yeah.
But I think the problem is that you can't use quarters to store the value of quarters and also the quarters. So like I would say that this probably, which then allows you to go initial value mod.
So you don't have to assign all of the.
Your logic's perfect, right? But this thing is your dime.
So we don't have to initialize the variables first. I mean,
no, because they're created.
Yeah.
Right, and the ampersand means that they're linked. So I'm gonna basically pass in variables. I'm gonna pass in boxes and say put something in this box, and I'm gonna get it later.
Yeah.
Right, and so you're gonna put something in the box right here, right, and then this, this is the smart way of doing it. Saying, okay, well let's find out what's left after 25, and then let's get the dimes out of it.
Now is initial value already defined somewhere, or do we make it up?
It's defined there, so it's coming in.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I'm going to pass it in, I'm going to give you that value, and it could be any value. So usually what I do in my head when I'm writing stuff like this is I just make up a value, like I did on the slide. I'm just going to assume initial value is 131. Okay, how do I write the algorithm? Knowing that it's that's looking good.
I will try that.
Well, remember, 2 equal signs for equality.
Before that one, I single just straight up error.
Because it's backwards, remember? Sign is always right.
Okay. Thank you.
Football backyard, the extra equals.
I got it out there.
So the way to check
I passed all mine, you already.
Yeah, I'm looking real quick. You passed all of them?
That's it.
You know, John, I don't know how you came up with something like that, but like this, with this logic, I didn't know how mod worked, but I guess this makes sense because you have to take that and then the remainder of that divided by that is.
But we did a similar thing in our Ruby class.
Yeah, I know, I didn't remember how to use mod at all. Okay, so let me try this. Okay, now I'm going to run. I didn't pass any of those tests. Oh, because I initialized. Oh, let me delete that. Yeah, because that's already been initialized. Nope, didn't pass any of those. So initial value somewhere, and then I say the value of quarters is assigned. The initial value divided by 25. Okay. That should work. And then I'll let me type all this stuff up real quick.
Oh, okay. That's what it does. So if you hit the initial value equals itself with the module, and the module and then go to here and then you can use it for the balance and so on. Oh, okay.
I probably didn't put a semicolon right there. Yeah, that might be part of it. Let me try that again. Nope, that didn't help either.
Yeah, but you didn't pass any?
No,
You didn't even pass the change one?
the one where you just. No?
Okay, go back to that.
Because I did this. Right.
Quarters equals initial value.
Oh, okay.
Okay, let me type the rest
Wait,
of this.
okay.
Divided by negative 9.8. The heck? Okay. What I did here is I made this a constant, so it doesn't change. I made it a double because that's the only way you can do that. This.
Okay, so for that you still need the quarters equals, dimes equals, all that.
Yeah, so quarters, dimes, nickels.
No, I mean that when you first initialize it, like quarters
I need.
equals 25. No.
Oh. Okay, let me try that.
If like the pennies and like the change one, if we're supposed to like see out the number of quarters.
No, I think it just does like a bunch of tests.
Since it says void in the function, that means it doesn't return anything.
So we don't need like return 0?
No, when you run the test, it's gonna say the change on that.
Let me try this now.
I can only pass like one test. You can't pass any.
See, I can't pass any. So you're further than I am.
What do you have?
0.
I mean,
For this. I initialized. Maybe I spelled some of these wrong.
Did you?
what I did is I equaled all of these to 0.
Oh, so that. Oh, okay.
And I also I redid like the initial values. I did initial value equals initial value mod 25.
Yeah, so
So the initial value is changing at the end of each division.
okay.
You can look at mine and see what I did, but
Are you passing only one test?
yeah.
Which
Just
test?
look at mine.
What test are you passing?
The first one. And this is what I have. It can always pass it. The very first test, they don't really want to show. But I'm going to remove this. Wait, you passed all of it?
You use the VPN. No, man, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm missing something. No? No, I'm not.
You can have a better understanding on, yeah, the timer offers and everything.
What am I doing wrong that is messing up? Because if I type all this, and it's still not.
Bring your laptop.
Yeah. So quarters equals initial underscore value divided by 25.
So you did equal.
So he still assigned all of those to their value.
Yeah, I was kind of assuming that quarters and dimes and stuff would be assigned in the test thing. Guess I was wrong.
Make. Let me clean it. Make clean. And then make. Oh, did I do that right? Make. No.
Wait, it had one error.
One error.
Parameter launch angle.
Launch angle.
Yeah, that's what did you use?
Degree, launch angle.
Lab underscore Q.cpd.
Degree launch angle.
Line 86.
Yeah, it says it's not used right here.
Yeah. Did you spell it right? Launch. Oh,
Is it not degree launch angle? It's just launch angle.
Yeah, I just got launch angle. Double radian angle equals launch angle.
Oh, I have to initialize. And then it's just launch angle?
Launch angle times KPI divided by 1.
Okay. Yeah, these all have to be initialized. These are all doubles, right?
Yeah, I just made them all double
They're all
because this stuff
decimals.
was double too, so I just figured I'd make it the same.
Okay.
And did you put the pound sign included the math stuff at the top?
Yeah, I have to include the what is it? CMath.
I put it's
Include and then
include math.h.
Or doesn't CMath work? Or is it math.h?
You can try CMath on that.
Yeah, I'm gonna try that. Because I looked over here and CMath is something math.h.
Yeah.
Yeah. So either way, maybe either way, we're gonna find out. Shit. I mean, I need to understand how this worked because I'm kind of.
Which part?
So for these parts, right? I would have to include a double because I have to initialize it because all these values are all decimals.
Yeah, you have to give that a type.
Yeah. And then all up here is okay. The launch. I didn't even have to use the degree launch angle, just launch angle. Okay. And this right here, this makes sense. I just had to figure out. Well, you figured it out, and I'm just agreeing with you because I understand now how this works. Because I didn't know how to use mod. Because how mod. Now that I understand how mod works, is you take the initial value. Let's just say that's 100, and then mod 25. There's no remainder, so there's no dimes.
Yeah.
And then for something like this, it'd be four quarters. And then that would be assigned into quarters.
I know.
Okay.
You were at least right storing it somewhere.
Yes. I was kind of right. I helped a little bit. I put in effort. Because I was trying to figure out where are those going? Because they're just, it's like you're taking like a value and then it's like, where do I live? Or like you go to a city and you don't know your address, you're like, where do I live? It's like they tell you your name, your occupation, all your information, and you're like, where do I live? And you're like, I don't know.
So did you want to start the math thing like next week?
Oh, we gotta do that like soon. Because what is your schedule? Do you have your schedule right now?
Yeah, I have it right.
And then over around you.
Right here?
Thursday.
You have the class right after this one.
Thursday and Friday.
Thursday and Friday? On Thursdays,
Thursday and Friday I have one class.
on Thursday I don't have any class except I have it in the morning. At 8 a.m. to 9:15, and on Thursday you have a class at 12:30. So we could have it like at 10 or like 9:30, and then 9:30 to whenever. We could do that. And Fridays you're here at 11 to 11:50.
That's my only class on Friday.
You have this class. Okay, so that's you're out at 11. So right after this class, you have another class. So yeah, we could do it on like Thursday at like 9:30 or 10 at the math lab on Thursdays, because I have to come to school tomorrow for a meeting at 10. So after that meeting, I'll come to the math lab, and then I have class at 12, and you have. Oh no, wait. You don't.
Thursday I have
12:30. So on Thursday, I don't have a class at all unless it's in the morning. So I could come after my meeting until you have to go to class. So we can start doing it on Thursdays. So on Thursday,
So
I'm available
really variables are not
to go to the math lab.
the denomination.
Until you or I go to class.
I know that's why you created the other. I think it'll be better if you just.
For math, I don't know. Because I don't know anybody else who, I can ask around.
Maybe do something like.
Yeah, 9:30.
Quarters.
And then Friday you come to class at 11. I come to class
Instead of
at
storing it, and just.
So on Fridays we can show up early and do that. If you want to come early.
I wake up at like 5:30.
5:30.
How many times is 25 quarters?
During like the break, I was working nights. So after I stopped doing that,
And the next question is, and after that, how much is left over?
So where do you?
That's all you were trying to like expand.
What is your commute to school?
like 10 minutes.
That
So,
can just take.
Yeah, we could do Friday too. Friday, same
And
time.
now we can mod
Because
it.
you have class.
So this says, how many times will 25 go into this number? This says after 25 goes into that number, what's left?
So we could do either of these days, and we'll touch base on like Wednesday. Because we work this class on Wednesday, so we'll say, okay, are we going to be available Thursday or Friday, or both, and then we'll meet up.
Do you want to give a number in case we were stuck or something?
Yeah. I can also text you my schedule.
So in this example, if initial value is 131 divided by 25, 540, 5.
Yeah, it starts at 228.
Right?
383.
Exactly.
65.
I should have written on that one. The whole point was I'm going to start writing on.
I'll see you.
Oh. With that message.
It's just, that's the message it gives. So I just.
I forward you my schedule. I'm gonna forward you my schedule.
We'll run, so if you want to catch it and make changes, you can run.
You are John, what's his name?
Edward.
Edwards. John Edwards. John Edwards. Okay, cool. I forwarded you my schedule. I'm gonna take a picture of this. And we can just text. We don't have to, meet in
So you can
class.
run it /lab_2, and that should test this one.
Yeah, because I get really confused really fast.
Yeah.
Because I started doing those intervals, and I'm like,
No, so this is different. This is blank.
because I gotta go to the math lab after class today. And I gotta get down on that because, oh my god. I mean, just look at this.
How many problems are on your first?
Okay, like 30. Okay. These are all the ones I didn't get. All that. A couple of these are complete the square like that. And that. That one I think you have to multiply by 1. I don't know about that one. I think that's U sub. That one's U sub 2. These are identities. This is long division, but I don't know if it is or not. And this says prove, and I mean there's an equation for it, but I don't know how to prove that. I'm so broken because look, I need help with completing the square multiplied by 1 in long division, because long division, the way she showed us in class is you take the denominator and then divide it into the numerator, but this doesn't work because the degree. This might work. This one will work, but I tried this and I got over it because I have 10 or 12 pages of homework because I was just constantly trying to do it, and then something like this is probably complete the square and then use sub. But I don't remember how to complete the square very well because I know there's an equation where you have to divide b by 2 and then you have to it's I don't know. I have to ask about that. These are identities because 1 plus sine is something, and then you have to do use sub after that or whatever. I was looking at Symbol Lab. It's an app on your phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you type it in, but it's telling me to do use substitution twice, which is not right because this section demonstrates how to do it efficiently, but on Symbol Lab, they're just solving it, so they'll do it with U sub or whatever. So I gotta go through all this, and I kind of butchered the entire assignment because as long as I turn it in, I get credit. Because it's there's so many areas where I'm I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah, I'm gonna be happy if I at least pass that.
Did you start 8.1? Or are you doing the calculus review?
She gave us a 1-page review sheet, and then she gave us 8.1.
Did you start doing 8.1?
Yeah.
Are you getting through it comfortably? Kinda? Are you kind of stuck on the same stuff I am?
Yeah, I know one of those on there, the ln2x one.
That's U sub, right?
Yeah, I think
you substitute 2x.
U equals ln2x, and then it turns
into a 1 or 2.
1 over x. I remember I did one similar to that on the math lab this morning.
Yeah, I gotta sign up for that thing.
Do we need to output any orders information?
No, it goes to the unit test,
Okay.
and one of the functions is void, so it has no return. No, you're good. Where's lab 2? Never mind.
Yeah. Okay. We can commit to this, right?
That's okay. I couldn't even spell like what quarters.
Yeah, and then
Couldn't even spell initial value correctly. Because I type so fast, and it's like, oh well, that variable doesn't exist. I'm like, oh. Yeah. Sometimes like I think faster than I type. So sometimes like if I'm thinking about typing the word like clear, I'll type the R first, and then like the E. I'm like, oh wait a minute, that's not right.
Right, but the way Git works, your name's already attached to every submission. So it's like a log message.
There we go.
Basically, I think
It still tells me I have errors, but when I compile it, it says everything passed.
Yeah, and
because when I make the file, it says that there's errors, and then when I compile it, it says it's passed. So I don't know. It says error E was not declared in this scope. Oh no, I fixed that. Okay, that's pretty. I accidentally typed E somewhere. Okay, now it says no return statement in function returning non-void. Okay, that's right. Oh no, I scrolled back too far. Oh, okay. Okay, let me try that. E was not where? Bitch, where? It says there's an E on like line 69, but there's not.
Is it on 68?
No, I'm looking right in that area. It says there's an E was not declared in the scope. Quarters initial value 25. It's not there.
Is there like a space in a word maybe?
No, because it's telling me there's an E that's typed after the semicolon, but there's not.
Really weird.
Okay, maybe it's just when I made the file, it's in the log or something. Because I did that a while ago and I fixed it. So I'm good. Hopefully.